Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Executive Lunch and Learn on employee engagement trends, AI, and other tips. We have our panel ready to go. So I'm going to give the ground rules real quick, a little roadmap, and then we'll get right to the meat and potatoes here and introduce you to our panelists. My name is Matt Willis. I represent AdvantageClub.ai. We have 5 million users, 120 countries, and what we do is employee engagement retention and all things related to recognizing employees in the workplace. And that allows us to be sponsor for great content like today. Today we have two panelists that will be joining us on the topic of employee needs, recognition, engagement, and AI as it relates to HR. So to start off with, hailing from the Orange County, we have Emily Youngerman. Emily comes to us from Tricon Residential, New York Stock Exchange, publicly traded company with over 36,000 family homes across the U.S., in addition to apartment homes, both U.S. and Canada. And there, Emily is in charge of all things related to employee engagement, experience, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Prior to that, Emily has a storied career with not only CSG, but also Wells Fargo. And in addition to all things culture and people, Emily has some chops with HR technology and implementation. So happy to have Emily here. In addition, we have Christina Santiago hailing from the other side of the country, from Philadelphia. Christina is the Senior Vice President and Human Resource Officer for the legendary Burpee Seeds, 140-year history, where she is in charge of not only all the strategy, but also execution for all things HR. She had a former role with foodware company, and prior to that, cut her teeth in the healthcare side with hospital work. So we're very excited to have a diverse and very seasoned veterans here today to share all things related to what we're seeing in terms of tips, tricks, and in the marketplace trends in that engagement and recognition. So with that, the way this will work today so that all audience members get their bang for the buck is we're going to really talk about just three things. And Scott, we can hit that next slide. One, understanding employee needs. It's a little bit tricky post-COVID, so we'll talk about that. Number two, engaging and recognizing employee. What is new and different out there in the marketplace? And number three, this amazing thing called AI. Is it creeping into HR? If so, how? And how is it related to today's topic? So that's what we're going to hit. So let's start off with, and let's just lay the groundwork here, right? We had in July 2024 a number of employee stats that came out. And from Gallup, we had the most recent stats that said 82% of employees were disengaged at work, which always is amazing to people that read that. And then they go into, well, how did you figure that out? And there's different levels of engagement. But we say, hey, we've got 52% of employees that say they are either actively or watching out for a new job. Gallup has done this each and every year, and it's a very highly credible study. And these numbers this year were the lowest in the last 13 years. So what we're seeing is not only is this a trend, this idea that people aren't engaged, but it's actually worse this year. And when we look at the other stats, and this is confirmed by Microsoft Work, Deloitte, and Towers Perrin, we've got people that are engaged at work. It's just the reverse, somewhere between 18 and that 25%, 50% actively disengaged, and 62% aren't engaged at all. What does that mean? They're doing bare minimums. They're on Zooms and really spending their critical time elsewhere. What is the cause of this? 1.9 trillion lost in GDP due to low engagement. Next slide. So we can move to that next one, Scott. And as we get there, what we notice is there is a disconnect. Certainly, everyone, if we were all in a room, would say, hey, are we trying to engage employees? Are we trying to recognize employees? Sure. Everyone would say, absolutely, we do that. And if you talk to the CEOs of organizations, of course we're doing that. And they say 88%. Yes, we actively recognize employees. But if I took those same companies and I went to frontline workers, hourly workers, staff workers, even the managers, and said, hey, have you been recognized? They're saying, no. What do you mean? No, I have not been recognized. So there's a big disconnect. There's a gap. Not only is it bad, but it's made worse because some of the leadership doesn't understand the gap. Now, we got 88% of Gen Z and millennials that feel disengaged, but those same demographics, and we have big generation gaps now in our workforce, they say they have a greater sense of belonging when their colleagues check in with them. So the silver lining here is it's a solvable issue. It's a solvable problem, and we just need to be a little trickier in the age of Zoom and Google Meets and all things virtual. Next. Okay, so we're going to pause here. What we're going to do is we're going to hit one of the pillars and get right to the panel. So part of the issue is what type of engagement? Do we want to throw out virtual happy hours? How do we engage employees? How do we track engagement? How do we recognize employees? So if we go to the next slide, the Josh Bersin Company did a very long research project with a number of companies, and they said, hey, look, here's what matters most in the 2024 world today. Employees want to see trust, transparency, inclusion, and caring. Now, there's lots of buckets. There's a very busy slide here. Anyone that attends has access to this slide at the tail end. But what we're seeing is, hey, we want trust in the company, right? Trust in leadership. But also, people are raising their hand at employees saying, I want career growth. I want wellness opportunities. I want the supportive workplace. And how does that look? It looks different at different companies, but that's what we're seeing today. That's very high and higher than it's ever been historically. So with that, we're going to pause and we're going to go to our panel. So why don't we start off with Christina? And the question posed to you is, how do we possibly find out what are employees needing and what are you seeing out there in the marketplace or your own organization? How are you dealing with this?
Sure. So for the last few years, actually, even prior to joining Burpee, one thing that I've learned is that we don't really know our employees. And what I mean by that is, what are their motivators? Each individual may have different motivators. And what I have found out throughout my career is that sometimes we kind of do cut and paste. This will work for everyone. And I went through my journey with DISC certification and started to really learn that some people are motivated by, chocolate milk and cookies. Other people are motivated by learning. Other people are motivated by being given a project or challenges. So I think the first step in really implementing any program is to really start to know your people and then begin to develop programs that meets needs across the organization, and not necessarily approach it, well, what's the most shiny thing out there today that should work for all of my people, but who are my people, and do my people know themselves and each other? So that's the approach I've taken, and I think it's worked great. And we always start off, when I join an organization, we start off with really taking some assessments and sitting in a room together, getting to know about each other. And it's been a great discovery and a great tool to use to help us start this process.
That's great. Emily?
Yeah, I liked your comment about cut and paste, right? So one of our approaches at Tricon is just understanding and supporting our employee needs. We use the Great Place to Work survey as a framework for us. That is our baseline for employee satisfaction. We also then conduct a tailored pulse check every 6 months in each of our markets. And this allows us to really dive into, like you said, what our employees want, what our employees need. Every location that we have is different. Every employee that we have is different. So taking these pulse checks, we allow and work with our leadership team to help them implement action plans based, again, on their employee specific needs. This just really allows us to place accountability where it's most effective, but also ensuring that we're using the employee feedback to make these programs that matter to our team. Based on the feedback and some of the trends that we're seeing, we see a lot around wellness and personal support. So at Tricon, we've adopted a holistic approach to employee well-being. We focus on 5 key categories, so social wellness, financial, emotional, physical, and career, and recognizing that issues like compensation, that's always something that's a frequent point on feedback. We're just ensuring that we're giving our employees the tools that they need to succeed personally as well as professionally. And our framework built on well-being ensures that every team member feels that they're valued, supported, again, not just in the workplace, but in their personal lives as well.
That's great. Okay. Now that we've determined, okay, we've taken a pulse check, we've got some analytics, we get something back. Now we have to execute, right? We've got to figure that out. So how are we doing that? So if we go to our next slide, we have almost 2,000 companies across the globe. And what we're seeing from 20,000 feet is more and different ways to engage employees. So what this looks like is, because we're virtual, because we're remote, because things have changed, because we're multi-generational, right? It's our job to think of different ways we can engage employees. So these are a few of the buckets we see that have really shot up in the last couple of years. And one is meaningful feedback, meaning, hey, let's train leaders, let's train frontline managers to get feedback. What didn't you say on that survey? Or what else do you need? Taking a few minutes in the one-on-one to get that meaningful feedback. The other is, hey, we touched on it, the career training. What exactly are you doing? Or can you make that specific? How are we addressing that? Then we see different ways to volunteer, raising your hands and then getting people involved. This could be formal and informal groups. And then the actual ERG groups, if you're a big company, if not, it's an informal group, right? Diversity, inclusion, but also we're seeing employee groups created for sports teams and for cooking clubs and for all sorts of opportunities just to get to know other people in your organization. And then, of course, the events and the fun. So we're seeing not just the quarterly pizza parties, right? We've got to get a lot more based on that employee needs assessment. We're seeing more and different. Likewise, when we get into next slide on the engagement, moving into recognition, service markers, can we recognize people or engage people around that? Peer recognition, birthdays and anniversaries, contests. How about that learning and achievement, right? You pass a certification. Hey, let's celebrate it. Let other people know. And then the leaderboards, not just sales. It can be support. It can be all sorts of things. So what are we looking at? How do we engage people? How do we recognize them? Next slide. And then finally, I think it's an important point. There's Ohio State research that came out just start of the year. It said, hey, that's great that you engage people or you do an experience or you have the barbecue in August, but if you can continue those experiences or continue that engagement, you're going to have an even higher return. So the consistent experiences are even higher. Okay, so with that, let's go back to our star-studded panel. And this time we'll start with Emily and we'll go to, okay, what are you doing or what have you been seeing, past or present, in terms of engaging and recognizing employees?
Sure. I love this question. I think that's kind of why we're all here today, right? To talk about recognition and engagement. But I think that the typical trend is that at most companies, recognition is largely governed by a corporate program. Something that we're doing at Tricon is trying to put recognition more in the manager's hands, but also build connections with their team members. So something that we've implemented recently was, instead of monetary awards, we're really trying to create more meaningful experiences for our team. So for example, we recently hosted Office Olympics, right? So all the fun and the little tiny events that you guys do. But we had a person who stood out and really led the charge on our Office Olympics event. That person has made it widely known that they have never attended a baseball game and wanted to go. So what we did, instead of providing a monetary award, was find them first row tickets, get them customized jerseys for them and their partner, give them a gift card so that everything was all expenses paid. And they attended their first baseball game, and that meant more to them than the monetary award. And we heard so much great feedback from that person around it. Of course, you're always going to have people that do appreciate the monetary piece, but creating an experience that they can do with others has turned out to be more meaningful based on our surveys and our satisfaction checkpoints. So I always encourage you to get creative with recognition. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. Yep. Get, creative with your recognition. And again, it just comes down to your people, right? You know how to do a corporate program, most of you on here. And if you don't, I'm happy to, show you what we're doing, but just providing different opportunities for them to pick out what means more to them, while also having managers get to know their team and provide something that is meaningful, I think is really important for us to consider.
That's great. Christina?
Sure. So I have the benefit of working in a smaller organization, and I'm a sucker for joining companies that the leadership is ready for change, and maybe there's a little more push and pull from the employee level. But when I joined Burpee, they actually had something in place that were, doing better to shape it, but it's called BEATS, which is Burpee Employee Engagement Team. And this actually is to align with also Emily's thinking from the manager level. So, our head of actually planning and forecasting runs BEATS. So it isn't necessarily HR. And then we have different employees from throughout the company sit in, and we change out people that sit in that room so that everybody gets an opportunity to really participate. But not too long ago, we were going to do, hot chocolates and cookies, as I mentioned to you. And I pushed back a little bit on just doing it as a nice thing to do in the company. And what we did is we built it out to be something a little more connected to, as an organization, we're really a little bit results driven. And so how do we make people feel really good about the accomplishments that we've had? So this is probably very simple, but we put up PowerPoints, and each PowerPoint in the room, while we were giving hot chocolate and cookies or whatever, we're celebrating the different achievements that our teams have had. We had little buttons, like little tokens with sayings, and we had them out on the table, and we asked our employees, hey, grab a token and give it to somebody, and thank them for the collaboration they gave you in accomplishing a project, or take a Post-it and put it up on this board and say thank you to a particular person or team that's done something amazing. And so we kind of try to tie in what are our goals and objectives overall in the organization, and how do we do meaningful activities that link back to what we're trying to accomplish as a company. At the same time, addressing those, go-getters. But again, I'm going to just tap into DISC really quick. 69% of people, when you do research throughout that have taken DISC, have a fear of change. They need stability. And the rest, there's a small 3% that are, you find your CEOs and your top guns in there. And you have to listen to that 60+% of people and what they need. Even if cookies and chocolate milk doesn't do anything for me, I have to, as a leader in this organization, say, well, how do I remove myself and my personal need and start to see my employee needs, and then find a happy middle where we're celebrating success, but at the same time, we're spending time together as a team and engaging with one another, and increasing people wanting to participate at work versus having to participate at work, which is, to me, the great difference in engagement versus not being engaged.
That's great. Okay. I think the themes there that we're seeing is creative, fun, flexible, what
Mhm.
employees want. Let's have a couple different options depending on where we're at in the organization and the divisions, et cetera. So that's consistent. Okay, next slide. Okay, so AI.
Mhm.
Everyone has heard, done, is involved with AI in some capacity. So we're not going to beat a dead horse here, but other than to say, hey, let's think about this as we have this discussion and we think about, we get our surveys back and we get our employee feedback, and then we start putting in some recognition. What can we automate? And then we say, okay, well, there's some things we can automate. And then if we automate something, how can we use AI? So what we're seeing, I think, globally, when some of our very big organizations, and we deal with Merck and Accenture, and we deal with Target and HM, we see feet in, not all the way, not 2 feet in, but we see a foot in or a toe in. And what we do see is some nudges. So as an example, if we have an employee resource group, and let's say it's in Emily's neck of the woods, and let's say it's a diversity inclusion, or let's just say it's the LA Clippers fan club, right, for basketball. What we may see is using our artificial intelligence is, hey, I saw you join the LA Clippers employee club, and there's 14 of you. Have you thought about getting involved with, and it could be the football team, or it could be active lifestyle, or it could be, hey, is there some other, there's an event coming up in September and we're doing a step challenge. Would you like to join? So we're using AI based on employees' preferences and needs simply to nudge them in a way that, hey, gets people more engaged. So we see some nudges and we see some automation. That's how it works. Next slide. In addition, what we're seeing here in this slide is we're seeing automated artificial intelligence that is there saying, hey, if you use a platform and you have a platform that automates some recognition or wellness activities, I can go and see, hey, Emily said congrats to me 9 months ago, and she said, hey, good job on something I did. It's Emily's workplace anniversary next week. Would you like to send her a note? Oh, great. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for reminding me. By the way, would you like me to write the note? This is your AI talking. Absolutely, I would like AI to write that note for me, and go ahead and I'll edit it before I send it to Emily. So what are we seeing? We're seeing nudges. We're seeing more opportunity for engagement. And we just had McKinsey that came out and said, hey, there's a 35% uptick in employee engagement with the use of artificial intelligence. This is what's happening. Now we're just on the virtual stages of this, but we're getting a lot of people requesting, how does this work and what exactly are we seeing? So this is one example related to engagement and recognition, but I'm going to go back to the panel and we'll take a break and go to the experts and say, hey, what are you seeing HR related or in general, either in the marketplace or your specific organization? So this time we'll start with Emily and then we'll go over to Christina. AI related to culture, engagement, HR, you name it.
I changed my mind. This is my favorite question. AI is the coolest, and it's so interesting to see how many people are using it in different ways. So I'll just tell you a bit about how I'm using it in my current role. So at Tricon, I am responsible for many things, and I am a team of one. AI has helped me automate so many different processes and also condense so many tasks that I was doing into smaller hours. So for example, I'm responsible for all of our internal communications. What I've done is created a chatbot through ChatGPT. That's something that you can do. And I've loaded it with information about my company, our brand guidelines, our tone, our voice, commitment statements about our programs, basically anything that it needs to help me create content in the sense of, hey, Tricon wants to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. Help me come up with a toolkit and information on how to celebrate that. And it will write it in our tone, aligned to our brand guidelines. So that's really cool from the sense that it could take me hours to write a communication like that, and this knocks it out in 4 seconds. I think that there's so many uses for it. You could do project management if you need a project plan, a comms plan. It can take data from any surveys you have or any feedback that you're getting and analyze it and tell you the top 3 trends or more, whatever you ask it to do. Something that we actually recently implemented was a AI-driven nomination process. We're implementing a manager development program, and what we did was feed the tool. We use ChatGPT and Bard and Gemini a lot. We fed the tool the criteria of what we're looking for from these nominations, as well as what the program will offer. And it spit out how beneficial this program would be for those nominations. It gave them a rating system. So that really helped us, streamline our process, but also ensure that the participants were well matched to the development opportunities. And you don't really get that a lot with the it's automated and it's looking into everything for you. So the other part, though, that is really important and that you kind of need to take in is that while it's a game changer, there's a lot of challenges related to misuse of AI. So something that we've actually had to do is implement more robust policies, inform our team around, data privacy and security more, and just give our team deeper training on how to utilize it without putting, confidential information in it. A lot of people love it. They think it's a great tool, but they don't really understand the concept of, open source. So that's just something for you guys to keep in mind if you do plan to use AI. There's a lot of great things coming, and I just can't wait to see, how else people are utilizing it. So I'd love to hear Christina and, what she's doing with it.
That's great. Christina.
Well, Emily, I think I have no more talking points.
Oh, no. You go.
I'm actually with both of you. The nudging is awesome. And just from a broad scale, I'll kind of work off of the tail end what Emily said. I'm aligned with a lot of the things she's already shared. And I'll just enhance or add to the last point about utilizing it in the workplace. And I do think, I don't know who's online and who's not online, but we do have to be considerate to, not just generationally, because my mom is in her 70s and she's a computer whiz, but you do have different skill sets in the workplace. And especially within HR, that used to be a very functionally driven, where it's, you fill out forms and you do, there's another, there's a group of our HR team members out in the workplace and HR pros that may not, are a little bit intimidated, I think, by the whole AI thing. And so Matt, even sharing our information today, hopefully will say to those of you that are listening that feel a little bit shyish about jumping in, we are available to help you through that process. In my current company, there's even, skepticism of whether or not ethically it's the right thing to do. What are the ethical challenges? And so I'll say that with caution, we've been approaching it a little slower. Look, you could just throw stuff in there and get a job description from there. That's something that would have taken you so long. You can get competencies for that job description. You can get interview questions. I mean, there's you can give them a story of how you want it to build off of that to create a document for your organization. But empowering our HR pros to really do the things that both of you have talked about, upskilling, integrating upskilling, fostering experimentation mindset, and developing a clear risk framework so that people know what they're walking into is very important. So I'll just talk on that end. The both of you spoke about some great things that are happening. We haven't integrated AI yet within our company here. My sister, she works for a very large organization, and the minute she goes into her intranet, there's that type of chat box that, you wanted to rewrite an email because it just doesn't seem right, or formulate a statement enhance it into your tone for your organization, all of those things, your cultural voice. So I'm aligned with what both of you said. I'm probably more in the world of trying to get buy-in that it is good for the world we live in.
I think that I'm just touching on that because I think a lot of people don't know what it can do until you know what it can do.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people are stuck on that. It's for a writing tool and editing emails. And if you, like Microsoft just launched Copilot, right? If you guys aren't using it yet,
Yeah.
don't bug your IT team. They're working through how to get it to you. But that one will look at kind of like a scheduling assistant. Hey, I need to have a meeting about this. Send an email to these people and find a time that works. Just does it for you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it also comes back that people are fearful of it because it could result in loss of jobs. It could take away bodies from your employee count. But if you embrace it and you get in with it now, it will be a game changer for your company.
Absolutely.
Let me just pop in here. We do have a couple questions that have been coming in from the audience, and one is on this topic, and it says to Emily or Christina, how do you get budget or influence from executive team for your projects?
Did you want me to say that? I'm going to say a very quick thing, and I'm going to let Emily jump in because she's actually using it at work. I will definitely say that in terms of productivity, there's no question the time savings that you will experience utilizing AI. You just have to understand how to use the tool and then be able to articulate to your leadership team how much more time you could spend on some really high value things, because your AI has really just enhanced your ability to your time to focus on those things. So I'll leave it there since I haven't necessarily implemented anything. I'd love to hear Emily's perspective. I
think it's hard, right? You need to make sure you're doing what matters to your executive team, but what also matters to your employees. Return on investment is the biggest thing that you could show, which you could use ChatGPT for. Like, hey, I have this program I want to implement. Help me show the ROI. But it's coming whether we like it or not, and that's something that the executive leadership team needs to know. So we're going to get left behind if we don't start being forward thinking and looking at all of what technology has to offer. So the best thing you could do is get the chief technology officer on your side always. Start there and have them help you drive the message as well.
That's great. Okay. You brought up ROI, so it's a good place to jump, right? So why do we do all this? Let's start with just the simple old Ted Lasso, thanks, I appreciate your card. Good old-fashioned handwritten note. Why do we do this? Because it's the right thing to do. It's what people want to hear. It's that personal touch. There was a great stat. I was at a conference, and the Senior Vice President, CBRE, CB Richard Ellis, the number one commercial real estate group in one of them in the world, said that, hey, pre-COVID, we measured productivity and we measured also kind of employee happiness. And it was about 70% pre-COVID. This is worldwide productivity. And then we were always at a 68% or so of happiness level. Post-COVID, if you go into 2022 and 2023 stats, productivity is back up to 70%. In some areas, it's higher, right? Virtual works, but employee happiness has plummeted. And why? We don't have that connection, right? We just don't have that meaningful connection. And it matters, especially generationally. There are some generations that need that even more. So let's go on to the next slide. ROI. So how do we get the ROI off doing what we talked about? Well, ROI and employee engagement, simple. Happier employees, happier customers. We've got stats at 70% from Deloitte, this year's study. Higher the engagement score internally, the higher your NPS score is going to be. There's a direct correlation. What does that mean? Higher productivity, lower turnover, higher revenue per employee, higher customer satisfaction, lower absenteeism. So every dollar in, man, that we're starting to see and quantify this better and better each and every day with the ROI of spending time on the employees, on the engagement and the recognition. Next slide. So we're going to wrap up here, and then we'll go back to our panel. To win the marketplace, you've got to first win the workplace. So we'll pause here. We can turn off the screen. And then in the next, we've got about a total of 4 to 5 minutes for each. If you need it, follow up on, hey, for the audience, Emily, and for the audience, Christina, what are the takeaways, tips, tricks, etc., all things related to employee needs, culture, engagement, and recognition? And before we go there, I just want to remind the audience, first of all, thank you for joining us. Secondly, if we didn't answer your specific question, don't worry. You have another bite at the apple, and we're going to send a copy of this so you can get a link to the slides today. And then Emily and Christina will have, they will, on that email you receive from us, will have their LinkedIn. So they are available. And in addition, we have 2 of our engagement leaders that are happy to set up a brief meeting just to talk about what we're seeing in your particular industry, size of company, et cetera. What are the tips and tricks? So beyond today, you still have an opportunity. If you have a question, please feel free to reach out. All right. So with that, let's go back to Christina. We'll have you start off with, give us your final thoughts here today, all things related to needs, engagement, recognition.
Well, I think, especially for those of you HR pros that join an organization and it's your first time in that organization, I think the most important thing to do with employee engagement is really figure out the maturity of that company, where they are from, whether they're 200 years old or 1 year old. Some people could still be at the initial stage and haven't progressed up to the optimized stage in an organization. So I think us, being in HR and we touch all the areas in the organization, when you can identify where we are in that journey, it's the best time to be able to say, okay, then if I'm at this place in the maturity model and I want to be optimized, well, how am I going to get my company there, partnering throughout the organization with the different leaders? And I think that when you're trying to build an organization and you bring a lot of leaders that are exposed to optimized environments, because that's what companies do, right? You go and you get strong talent to come and help you build up an organization. Many times it's difficult for someone that's been in an optimized environment to come into an environment that isn't, and not be like, why aren't we here? But it's getting us through that journey. So, you're going to have early adopters, but you're also going to have that 60-something% of employees that you need to think about. And when we think of AI and we think of engagement, all these different things that we've seen a lot of in the last 5 to 10 years, more so than any other time. I come from a generation, you work really hard, you keep your head down, and you get paid for the job you do. And if you work really hard and you're seen, you get a promotion. And that's just, it was a simple time. We're in such a complicated, or maybe complex, emotionally complex world today. And we have to be considerate that we have a lot of generational gaps. We have to be considerate that we have different ages in the workplace. We have to be considerate that some things motivate others and they don't motivate others. And we have to think about how do we then take all of these different things and create a collaborative, unified group of people that feel like they have psychological safety in the workplace, can give each other feedback explaining, hey, that doesn't work for me. And the other person being able to say that back and creating that psychological safety that does help with engagement. I think that's one of the greatest issues in the workplace sometimes, is just being able to give feedback. I know we talk about it easily. I'm someone that used to be very, very optimistic, and then I became someone that started to want to see what I wasn't seeing as the highly optimistic person. What are the issues that I'm not paying attention to? Because I'm naturally optimistic. I had to say to myself, well, guess what? Everybody's not like you, Christina. Look at your organization and start listening to where your people are and what they need. When you start giving that ear, and like I said, I've recently worked for smaller companies. I love sitting one-on-one, regardless of my title, with a warehouse associate, with a customer service rep, with a manager, with a junior manager, with someone that wants to grow with the company. It doesn't matter to me. And giving that time where people feel seen and heard is a huge, I think, benefit from what I've experienced personally. But I'm hungry and I'm excited about what's happening in the industry. And I'll leave it at that I want to see where AI takes us. I love Advantage Club. I'm starting to now join you in that journey. And I'm hoping that the organization really feels seen and heard through these different technologies that exist. Because I don't think you can replace people with technology, but I believe that you can take technology and create more engagement with it if you use it in the right way.
Great. Thanks. Emily.
I could take so many minutes to talk about this, but for me, it really boils down to if you're actively seeking employee feedback, you need to use it to make your programs that matter to your team. So if you're truly a people first company, you're going to be using that to align all of the initiatives that you want to do from a business perspective. I also have seen a lot of people love to apply for awards. We always want to be like a best workplace, an inspiring workplace. But if you're not taking that feedback from that either and utilizing it to adjust action plans or make the programs that matter, your employees are not going to feel valued. They're not going to feel heard. And that is really a true cause of disengagement. So I'm keeping it short and sweet because I think that is the most important thing for you to do. Take your employee feedback and use it to build your programs. It's a very integral part of a company's evolution, and it is a new way of thinking. I think in the past, we kind of were like, hey, here's what we're doing, like it or not. Yeah, we hear you, but we're not really going to do anything with that feedback. You can, change it up and really make sure that your team feels heard.
It's wonderful. Okay, with that, thank you all for attending. Thank you once again, Emily, Christina. It's been fantastic. We will follow up with an email so that you have this great content that you can share with your respective organizations. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.